Pay attention, because the atmosphere surrounding tonight is anything but ordinary. There are moments in astrology that pass quietly, and then there are moments that create a dividing line between who you were and who you become afterward. What unfolds on June 14th belongs in the second category. A doorway is opening in the sky that has not presented itself in this exact way for more than 80 years, and the significance of that fact cannot be overstated. This is not hype. This is not symbolism stretched beyond recognition. This is one of those rare cosmic alignments that carries enough weight to alter the direction of a life. And for some people listening right now, that process has already begun. Tonight, a super new moon arrives in Gemini, the sign connected to communication, perception, information, thought patterns, and the way the mind interprets reality itself. Yet calling this merely a new moon would be like calling a tidal wave a splash of water. There is an unusual concentration of energy surrounding this lunation, a level of amplification that most people will never notice because they are looking only at the surface. Beneath the visible event is a much larger story unfolding. And for 3 zodiac signs in particular, the information emerging through this cosmic gateway has the potential to reshape everything. Not someday. Not years from now. The effects begin now. This is the type of revelation that creates a clear distinction between the chapter that came before and the chapter that follows. If you have felt restless recently, if your mind has seemed louder than normal, if certain thoughts keep repeating themselves as though they are demanding your attention, do not dismiss it. Many people assume these internal experiences are random fluctuations of mood or stress. Yet sometimes the psyche recognizes an approaching shift before the conscious mind has the language to describe it. The strange sensations, the heightened awareness, even those moments when it feels as though your intuition is trying to break through layers of noise, all of it may be connected to the energetic environment building toward tonight. Most people will move through this date without recognizing its significance. They will treat it like any other evening, follow the same routines, think the same thoughts, and wake up tomorrow assuming nothing important happened. But those who understand the deeper currents moving beneath the surface may eventually look back on June 14th as the exact point where their trajectory changed. The fascinating part is that none of this appeared suddenly. The universe has been arranging the conditions for this moment for weeks. The story did not begin tonight. It began earlier in the month when the cosmic groundwork was quietly being established. Think back to June 9th, only 5 days ago. On that day, Venus and Jupiter formed an exact conjunction in Cancer. Venus represents affection, values, beauty, connection, and the things that bring meaning to the heart. Jupiter governs expansion, opportunity, abundance, growth, and blessings that seem to arrive from beyond ordinary effort. Their meeting alone would have been noteworthy, but the location of that conjunction made it exceptionally powerful. It occurred in Cancer, the sign associated with emotional foundations, family, belonging, home, and the inner structures that create a sense of safety. Jupiter is exalted in Cancer, meaning its ability to provide support, prosperity, and protection operates at extraordinary strength there. When Venus merged with that energy, it generated a wave of emotional nourishment that reached people in deeply personal ways. Some may have noticed a relationship becoming more stable. Others may have experienced a breakthrough regarding family, housing, or emotional security. Some simply felt a surprising sense of peace arrive without any obvious explanation. For perhaps the first time in a long while, the future felt less threatening. The ground felt steadier beneath your feet. That feeling was not accidental. It was part of a larger preparation. Before the universe could deliver the messages associated with tonight's super new moon, it first needed to strengthen the emotional foundation beneath you. Information travels differently when it enters a fearful mind than when it enters a grounded one. Fear distorts. Scarcity narrows perception. Anxiety creates static. The cosmic support offered through the Venus-Jupiter conjunction was designed to reduce that interference. It was meant to remind you that stability exists, that support exists, and that you are capable of receiving what comes next without being overwhelmed by it. Then another important shift occurred yesterday when Venus entered Leo. Suddenly, the emotional tone changed. The focus moved away from quiet internal reassurance and toward confidence, visibility, self-expression, and creative courage. Many people likely felt this transition without realizing what caused it. Perhaps there was an urge to speak more honestly. Perhaps inspiration arrived unexpectedly. Perhaps a growing resistance to shrinking yourself became impossible to ignore. That surge of vitality was not random either. It served a purpose. The cosmos was preparing not only your emotional body, but also your confidence. Because the message arriving through tonight's portal requires more than receptivity. It requires the courage to act upon what you discover. Now we arrive at the detail that makes this lunation remarkably different from nearly every other new moon. At 11 o'clock tonight, the Sun and Moon unite at the same degree of Gemini, creating the new moon itself. Yet something extraordinary happens at that exact moment. The moon forms no major aspects with any other planet, no squares, no trines, no oppositions, no dominant planetary conversation influencing its birth. In astrology, this condition is known as being void, of course. Many people misunderstand that phrase and immediately assume it suggests inactivity or lack of significance. The opposite may be true in this case. When a lunation begins in a void condition, especially within Gemini's highly mental and communicative landscape, it creates a field that is unusually pure. Imagine a signal arriving without competing broadcasts. Imagine a message delivered without interference. There is no Saturn imposing restrictions, no Neptune blurring perception, no Mars accelerating reactions before understanding can develop. The energy emerges in its most unfiltered state, and understanding what that means may completely change the way you view what is about to unfold next. What makes this moment so powerful is not what is being added to your mind. It is what is being removed from it. Most lunar cycles arrive tangled in a web of competing influences. Different planets pull your attention in different directions, creating layers of interference that make it difficult to know which thoughts are truly yours and which are merely reactions to external pressure. This super new moon is different. It arrives like an untouched field after a storm has passed, a rare stretch of silence where something authentic finally has room to speak. That is why I keep referring to this as a portal of messages, not because information is suddenly appearing from nowhere, but because the usual barriers standing between you and your own deeper knowing have temporarily stepped aside. In that silence, something important can finally be heard. A realization may emerge that instantly rearranges the way you see your future. A conversation may unfold that alters the direction of a relationship. A single insight may connect years of confusion into one clear understanding. And what makes that so remarkable is that this understanding is not being forced upon you by any outside influence. It is not being shaped by Saturn's restrictions, clouded by Neptune's uncertainty, or accelerated by Mars, pushing you into reaction before reflection. What surfaces now rises directly from the clearest and most honest layer of your own awareness. Events like this are exceptionally uncommon, and because of that, every intention you set, every belief you reinforce, every word you speak into existence under this lunation carries unusual significance. The mental seeds planted now possess a potency that many other new moons simply do not have. Yet there is another dimension to this story, and once you see it, the symbolism becomes impossible to ignore. This new moon aligns with a specific fixed star known as Mesa, the star that marks the head of Orion, the hunter. Pause for a moment and consider the image that creates. A hunter does not drift without purpose. A hunter does not spend energy chasing every distraction that appears on the horizon. A hunter identifies what matters, fixes attention upon it, and moves forward with unwavering precision. That archetype is woven directly into the fabric of this lunation. The guidance arriving now is not meant to be vague or confusing. It is not designed to leave you wandering through uncertainty. The message carries focus. It carries direction. It carries a level of clarity that demands action rather than endless contemplation. But Misa also presents a challenge. Precision requires attention, and attention has become one of the rarest resources in the modern world. If your awareness is scattered across endless notifications, arguments that do not matter, repetitive distractions, emotional drama, and constant digital stimulation, the signal can become buried beneath the noise. The message may still arrive, but you may fail to recognize it for what it is. This is where the symbolism attached to the exact degree of this new moon becomes almost startling in its accuracy. The Sabian symbol for this lunation is a gardener trimming large palm trees. Notice what the gardener is not doing. The gardener is not planting something new. The gardener is not adding more. The gardener is removing, pruning, cutting away excess growth that no longer serves the health of the tree. Dead branches are cleared so that life can flow more efficiently through what remains. The symbolism could not be more direct. Before the breakthrough arrives, something unnecessary must be released. Perhaps it is an outdated belief about who you are. Perhaps it is a narrative you have repeated so often that you mistake it for truth. Perhaps it is a habit of thinking that keeps leading you back into the same emotional patterns. Perhaps it is simply the endless stream of distractions filling every quiet space in your day. Whatever form it takes, the message is clear. The revelation you are seeking depends upon your willingness to create room for it. Remove the excess and clarity emerges. Cling to the clutter, and even the most important insight may pass unnoticed. This also explains why your inner world may have been behaving differently lately. If your thoughts have seemed unusually intense, if emotions have been surfacing unexpectedly, if memories have appeared without warning, there is a reason. The ruler of this Gemini new moon is Mercury. Yet Mercury is not currently traveling through Gemini. Mercury is moving through Cancer, a sign associated with emotion, memory, family history, belonging, and the subconscious mind. As a result, the normal pathways of mental processing have been redirected through emotional channels. Logic and feeling are temporarily speaking the same language. That shift may have shown up in subtle ways. A song may have affected you more deeply than expected. A memory from years ago may have resurfaced with surprising intensity. A conversation you thought was finished may have returned to your mind, not because you needed to analyze it, but because you needed to experience its emotional truth more fully. Mercury in Cancer slows the intellect just enough to allow the heart to participate in the conversation. That is intentional. The information arriving through this portal is not merely intellectual. It carries emotional significance. It may relate to family dynamics. It may concern your living situation. It may involve your roots, your history, or your sense of belonging in the world. The truth is not hiding in the literal words being spoken. The truth lives underneath them, inside the feeling they awaken within you. And there is another reason this matters so much. Mercury is already moving through the territory that will later become its pre-retrograde shadow. On June 29th, Mercury stations retrograde in Cancer and will remain part of that story until late July. This means the realization arriving now is not a conclusion. It is a beginning. The insight that appears in mid-June is the opening chapter of a much larger narrative. Information will evolve. Details will reveal themselves gradually. Meanings that seem obvious today may deepen dramatically over the coming weeks. What appears straightforward now may contain layers you cannot yet see. For that reason, receive whatever arrives with openness, but resist the temptation to force immediate conclusions. Allow the process to unfold. Let the message breathe. The retrograde period ahead will separate temporary assumptions from enduring truth and will reveal which parts of the story still require adjustment. As this portal continues opening, everyone will feel some degree of its influence. The collective atmosphere is already changing. Yet for 3 zodiac signs, the alignment of this Gemini Super New Moon places them directly in the center of the unfolding energy. The geometry of the sky points toward them with unusual precision. If your sun, moon, or rising sign belongs to one of these 3, the developments that begin between now and the end of June may become the catalyst for changes so significant that years from now you will still trace major chapters of your life back to what begins here. And understanding why those signs are being singled out is where the story moves next. Gemini, whether your sun, moon, or rising sign falls here, understand something important before anything else. The person you were identifying with yesterday is already beginning to fade. This super new moon is not happening somewhere in the background of your chart. It is taking place in your first house, the area connected to identity, self-image, personal presence, and the way you introduce yourself to the world around you. When a lunation activates this part of the chart, life tends to become intensely personal. Yet what makes this particular experience so unusual is the fact that this new moon is born void, of course. That means the shift unfolding within you is not being imposed by circumstances, pressure, conflict, or some dramatic external event. Nobody is forcing you into a new chapter. No crisis is pushing you there. Instead, something far more subtle and far more profound is taking place. A realization is forming from within. It may arrive suddenly, or it may emerge through a quiet moment of reflection, but when it arrives, it will feel undeniable. You are reaching a point where the distance between who you truly are and who you have been pretending to be becomes impossible to ignore. For months, perhaps without fully recognizing it, you have been growing beyond old definitions of yourself. The way you speak, the way you carry yourself, the roles you have been playing, even the expectations you have accepted from other people, all of it may have started feeling strangely uncomfortable. Not because anything was necessarily wrong with it, but because it belonged to an earlier version of you. Many Geminis have been experiencing an invisible tension, a feeling that they are trying to squeeze themselves into an identity that no longer fits, like wearing clothing tailored for someone they used to be rather than the person they are becoming. This new moon marks the moment when that tension reaches clarity. The transformation is unlikely to arrive through public drama or emotional chaos. It is more likely to appear as a private, internal decision. A moment where you stop negotiating with yourself. A moment where you stop explaining, defending, or justifying your existence. A moment where you realize that authenticity requires less effort than performance. Once that shift occurs, the outer world begins responding differently. The conversations entering your life over the coming weeks will reflect this new version of you. Relationships will adjust. Opportunities that previously seemed invisible may suddenly become accessible. People may begin seeing strengths in you that they overlooked before. Yet none of that begins externally. It begins with the quiet decision to stop carrying identities that no longer belong to you. Remember the image of the gardener trimming the tree. Growth sometimes requires release. Let what has expired fall away. The stronger version underneath is already waiting to emerge. Virgo, your story unfolds in an entirely different part of the chart, but the impact may be just as significant. This super new moon rises to the highest point of your chart, activating your 10th house, the sector associated with career, professional achievement, public recognition, long-term success, and the legacy you are building through your work. This is the area that determines how the world perceives your accomplishments and how your efforts translate into visible results. What makes this especially important for Virgo is the fact that both Gemini and Virgo answer to the same planetary ruler, Mercury. Because of that connection, you are exceptionally sensitive to the signals moving through this lunation. If your mind has felt unusually active lately, if your nervous system seems charged with expectation, if there is a persistent feeling that something professional is about to change, do not dismiss it as simple anxiety. What you are sensing may actually be anticipation. The relationship between this new moon and your sign forms a square, a 90-degree aspect known for creating pressure and movement. Squares are rarely comfortable, but they are often productive. They refuse to allow stagnation. They create enough friction to force growth where growth has been delayed. For many Virgos, this means a professional situation that has remained stuck for far too long is approaching a turning point. The communication arriving through this portal is likely to come through career-related channels, and it carries tangible consequences. A professional offer could arrive from an unexpected direction. A project that seemed trapped behind endless obstacles may suddenly begin moving forward. Someone with influence or authority may open a door you thought was permanently closed. Recognition may come from an individual whose opinion genuinely matters within your field. Pay particularly close attention to the period between June 18th and June 27th. Messages, emails, meetings, conversations, and professional exchanges carry unusual significance during this window. Listen carefully to what is being said, but also pay attention to what remains unsaid. The mutable quality of Gemini rewards flexibility. Virgos who become trapped trying to control every outcome may experience frustration. Those willing to adapt, communicate, and move with changing circumstances are positioned for substantial progress. Something that has been delayed, whether it involves bureaucracy, negotiations, approvals, or professional decisions, appears ready to move forward with surprising speed. The opening may arrive suddenly, and because opportunities like this do not remain available forever, readiness becomes your greatest advantage. Sagittarius, the energy unfolding for you is perhaps the most emotionally revealing of the three. This super new moon stands directly opposite your sign, illuminating your seventh house, the realm of committed partnerships, marriage, contractual relationships, and the people who act as mirrors reflecting your own growth back to you. Oppositions function like powerful spotlights. They reveal what has remained hidden. They expose what has been overlooked. And when the seventh house is activated, the spotlight inevitably falls upon the closest relationships in your life. Yet the deeper truth is not simply about another person. It is about what those relationships reveal about you. Gemini energy moves quickly and cuts directly to the point. It has little patience for avoidance. It has little interest in vague explanations or philosophical detours. Under this new moon, conversations become specific. Questions demand real answers. Subjects that have lingered beneath the surface begin seeking expression. The things left unsaid between you and an important person may no longer remain hidden. Honest communication becomes unavoidable. The energy of this portal pushes both people toward transparency. And depending upon the foundation beneath the relationship, that transparency can lead in one of two very different directions. If the connection is built upon genuine respect, emotional honesty, and strong roots, this new moon becomes an opportunity for profound growth. Discussions that once felt impossible suddenly become easier. Vulnerability becomes safer. Understanding deepens. The relationship evolves into a more authentic version of itself. Walls come down, trust expands, intimacy strengthens. Yet if the foundation has been weakened by avoidance, complacency, fear, or attachment to familiarity rather than true alignment, the same light reveals a different reality. Not to punish you, not to create suffering, but to provide clarity. Sometimes, the greatest gift the universe can offer is not comfort. It is the ability to see the truth without distortion. And for Sagittarius, that truth is moving closer with every passing day, preparing to reveal exactly what has been hidden beneath the surface all along. And why what happens next may become one of the most important relationship turning points of the entire year. There are moments in life when uncertainty suddenly reaches its expiration date. Moments when the endless internal debate finally collapses under the weight of a truth that can no longer be ignored. For many Sagittarius individuals, that is exactly what this new moon is preparing to deliver. The exhausting cycle of questioning, analyzing, second-guessing, and wondering whether to continue investing energy into a particular relationship is approaching a conclusion. Not because someone else makes the decision for you, but because clarity arrives with such force that confusion simply cannot survive in its presence. A significant person may reveal information, express emotions, or initiate a conversation that changes the entire landscape of the connection. In other cases, no dramatic words may be necessary at all. You may simply see something you have been unable or unwilling to acknowledge until now. A pattern becomes visible. A dynamic suddenly makes sense. A truth that has been sitting quietly beneath the surface finally rises into full view. And once it does, there is no returning to the comfort of uncertainty. By the time June reaches its conclusion, the relationship in question will not occupy the same emotional space it occupies today. Something fundamental will have shifted. This Gemini new moon has little patience for gray areas. It seeks definition. It seeks honesty. It seeks decisions. Sagittarius is symbolized by the archer, and every archer eventually reaches a moment when aiming in every direction becomes impossible. The target must be chosen. The energy must be committed. The path forward must become intentional. Yet while these personal stories are significant, they are only one layer of what is actually happening. Beneath every individual realization described so far, a much larger movement is unfolding. Imagine standing on the shore watching a single wave approach. What most people do not realize is that the visible wave is being carried by an entire ocean moving beneath it. The same principle applies here. The unusual geometry of this new moon, the alignment with Mesa, the targeted impact on Gemini, Virgo, and Sagittarius, all of these developments are taking place within an even greater astrological story. That story centers around Uranus. Uranus, the planet associated with disruption, innovation, awakening, breakthroughs, and radical change, entered Gemini on April 25th of this year. This is not a routine transit. Uranus has not occupied Gemini since the 1940s. The last time humanity experienced this combination, the world underwent extraordinary transformations in communication and information exchange. During that era, the atom was split. The foundations of modern computing emerged. Television transformed how information entered homes across the globe. Entire systems of communication were reinvented. Humanity began thinking differently because humanity began communicating differently. Now Uranus has returned to Gemini once again, and it will remain there until the year 2033. Over the coming years, this transit will reshape how people learn, connect, share knowledge, process information, and understand reality itself. The implications extend far beyond individual lives. This is a generational shift, and that is precisely why today's super new moon carries such unusual importance. Because it occurs in the same sign now occupied by Uranus, it acts as a bridge between your personal consciousness and this larger evolutionary process. The insight arriving now is not isolated from the collective. The realization emerging in your mind is connected to a much broader transformation taking place throughout society. The conversation that changes your direction, the sudden understanding that reorganizes your priorities, the idea that refuses to leave your attention. These experiences are participating in a wider awakening regarding how truth is perceived, communicated, and understood. What appears personal may actually be part of something historic. The timing becomes even more remarkable when we consider what happens next. On June 20th, only 6 days after this new moon, Uranus forms an exact square to the lunar nodes, the axis associated with collective destiny and karmic direction. Whenever the nodes become activated, choices gain additional significance. Events begin carrying consequences that extend further into the future. Decisions become crossroads. Under this influence, the thoughts you nurture, the words you speak, and the actions you choose during this portal period possess a weight that exceeds ordinary circumstances. They are not merely shaping the coming days. They are influencing the direction of the years ahead. That is why this moment should not be approached casually. The message entering your awareness now is supported by powerful currents of collective evolution. Resisting it may feel increasingly difficult because the energy pushing for change is not coming solely from your personal circumstances. It is emerging from the larger movement of the era itself. So, how do you work with a portal like this rather than miss it entirely? The answer begins with simplicity. First, reduce unnecessary noise. Every symbolic element connected to this new moon repeats the same instruction. The gardener removes excess growth. The hunter focuses on a single target. The void of core structure eliminates interference. The message is unmistakable. Clarity requires space. If your attention is fragmented by endless distractions, the signal becomes harder to recognize. Step away from what drains your focus. Create intentional quiet. Even a brief period of silence can become the environment where an important realization finally emerges. Second, trust what your body communicates. Mercury remains in Cancer, and because of that placement, information is arriving through emotional channels rather than purely intellectual ones. Do not assume that truth will always announce itself through logic. Sometimes it arrives as a physical sensation, a feeling in your chest, a sudden emotional reaction, a memory surfacing at an unexpected moment, a deep inner knowing that appears before the mind can explain it. Your emotional responses are carrying valuable information right now. Listen carefully. Third, preserve what arrives. Between now and June 28th, pay attention to meaningful conversations, insights, dreams, realizations, and emotional breakthroughs. Record them. Write them down. Capture them before they fade. Mercury's upcoming retrograde journey through Cancer means many of these themes will return in July for deeper examination. What feels like a simple observation today may later reveal itself as the key piece of a much larger puzzle. Finally, allow patience to become part of the process. The purity of this new moon creates exceptionally clear messages, but Mercury's approaching retrograde indicates that not every detail has been revealed yet. There is wisdom in receiving information without immediately forcing conclusions. Let understanding mature naturally. Let events develop. Let additional layers reveal themselves over time. The universe has delivered the opening chapter. There is no need to rush ahead to the final page. What stands before us now is not a subtle, energetic shift. It is not a faint whisper barely audible above the noise of everyday life. This Gemini Super New Moon arrives like a powerful signal announcing that a new phase of mental evolution has begun. For Gemini, the transformation centers on identity and self-definition. For Virgo, it accelerates professional growth and public advancement. For Sagittarius, it exposes essential truths within significant relationships. For everyone else, it opens a rare portal, unlike anything experienced in more than 80 years. The opportunity now belongs to each individual. The sky has delivered the message. What happens next depends entirely on whether you choose to recognize it, trust it, and move forward with it. And as this extraordinary cycle begins unfolding, the story it initiates may become one you remember for the rest of your life. Thank you for spending this time here and sharing your attention. If this message resonated with you, and you would like to continue exploring these powerful cosmic events together, consider subscribing and becoming part of this growing community. Your support means more than you know. I would also love to hear what you're experiencing during this new moon cycle, so feel free to share your thoughts and insights in the comments. Until our next journey together, take care of yourself. Stay open to the messages arriving around you, and remember to subscribe for more astrology and spiritual guidance.